Seems that every day the list of carrots and sticks offered and used by the Democrats in Congress and in the White House continues to grow. While horse trading, as this was once called, has been the norm in American politics for centuries, the current atmosphere, wherein it appears that the president's folks will stop at nothing in order to win congressional votes, as they did for the federal takeover of health care, may actually be crossing the line from the political even into the criminal. The health care bill, which is now the law of the land, in that health care bill, lawmakers got sweetheart deals in order to pass this legislation, and these deals will no doubt be investigated. Why should some states get more benefits and pay less money than the rest of us? What can we do? We can vote the bums out of their cushy federal offices and vote lawmakers in that will return our great nation to the principles established by our founding fathers. Political courage is a rare commodity these days, and fidelity to the Constitution among those in government is even more rare. My next guest vows that if elected, unlike most of today's lawmakers, he will restore, will preserve, and will defend the Constitution as it should be. Joining me now is Rick Torres, congressional candidate in Connecticut's 4th District. Rick, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Judge, it is an absolute delight to speak to you, sir.
How is it that the leadership of the Republican Party accepts you or rejects you when you point out that both parties don't have any faith and any compliance with or fidelity in the Constitution?
Sir, I'm not looking to be accepted or rejected by any party. I'm looking to be accepted by the people of Connecticut as a member of We the People. I am a Republican by party, but I am much more than that. I think I'm a person that recognizes the history of the United States of America, its Constitution, and I am intent on making sure that our country is restored to its constitutional limits. And what's gone on with health care, as you were just talking before, I must say that the foundational problem that we have with it, or that I have with it, sir, is that it's just flat unconstitutional and anti-free market.
You have a very unique background, Rick, because of your family's involvement with Cuba. And I think it was your uncle or your grandfather who thought that Castro would liberate Cuba from Batista and obviously recognized that he was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Question: do you see some of the same type of big government things happening today here in the U.S. that happened in Cuba and sapped people of their liberty and their property in ways that caused generations to suffer mercilessly?
Look, I tell people all the time that government programs generally will deteriorate till the lowest common denominator, and that's what happens in Cuba. In Cuba, nobody works well, no one works hard, because frankly, you all get paid the same thing anyhow. So why work hard? This country, and I explain to them all the time, that's the reason that government can't do things well. It's a foundational problem that government has. The free market, on the other hand, has the incentives of wanting to create wealth and wanting to create prosperity. Through those two incentives, we improve our lifestyles and our products.
We're chatting with Rick Torres, who's running for the Republican nomination for Congress in the 4th Congressional District in Connecticut. When you make these wonderful arguments about the value of the free market, and when you support those arguments, Rick, with many of your personal observations of a country where there is no free market and there is no incentive to work, as you just mentioned, Cuba, and a country here where there once was a free market and it's gradually dwindling, how does that resonate in Connecticut, a state where every single representative in Congress, all members of the House and both members of the Senate, voted for this monstrosity, this health care monstrosity?
I tell you, my foundational belief is that most of us are conservative in nature anyhow. It's just that the Republican Party has failed to demonstrate the inequities of the two systems, of the public system and the private system. So what I do often is take people to public housing. I just did it recently to demonstrate the tyranny of government. Recently, there was a movie, Precious, that you might or might not have seen on television.
Right.
It's a horrific movie that takes a young girl whose parents take advantage of her sexually. But the more important thing about that movie is the backdrop that exists in that movie that is all government. government education that failed miserably, government housing that failed miserably, government welfare that fails miserably. When we demonstrate the miserable failures of government, people come to our side and realize what's going on. Unfortunately, we haven't engaged in that debate, sir.
You've been a very successful small businessman in Bridgeport, Connecticut. You've taken businesses that were failing and made them flourish. You've created jobs for a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't have jobs. And you single-handedly took neighborhoods that were depressed and made people want to come back to those neighborhoods. Does that resonate even with a very liberal, government-loving electorate like we have in Connecticut, like you have in Connecticut?
Well, you got to know something else about me, Judge. I come from public housing, sir. I come from the inner city. I'm born and raised in Bridgeport, the largest and poorest city in my district. I've never left. Through the grace of God and a lot of good luck, I was able to find a way to get educated, and I am very well educated. But I am also dedicated to the proposition that people living in the inner city, in public housing, in fact, are living in tyranny,
right.
A tyranny that Barack Obama wants to expand, not contract, expand to the rest of us. And so what I'd like to do is a demonstration project, for instance, God willing, if I'm elected to Congress, is go back into the inner city and liberate those folks from public programs. And God willing, I'll have an opportunity to do that.
We're chatting with Rick Torres, who's running for Congress in the 4th Congressional District in Connecticut. What is the single most important issue in your race? Is it the lack of fidelity to the Constitution? Is it the destruction of the free market? Is it too much taxation and too much government? What resonates most with a fairly liberal Republican Party from which you, as a person that believes in the free market and the Constitution, are seeking votes?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, the most important thing in Connecticut is jobs. That is clear. We have to get jobs back. But how do we create jobs? Government cannot create a job. Cannot. And the reason that it cannot create a job is because it must steal money from the private sector first to then implement it itself. But in the process, in the exchange, a certain amount of money is wasted. So it takes more than one job lost in the private sector to create one job in the public sector. That's number one. Number two, because we've drained our economy of money, the private sector cannot grow. You know, people are talking about restoring liquidity to the private economy. You can't. We're robbing it every day with our deficit spending. We're robbing it in many other different ways. It's critical to restore that money back to the private economy and allow the private economy to do what it does best, which is to grow.
Rick Torres, good luck in your race in Connecticut. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch. Come back and visit us again as we get closer to primary election day.
Thank you, Judge. It's a great pleasure to be with you today, sir.
Thank you. You can catch today's show on foxnews.com/Freedom Watch and on Sirius 145, XM 168, or online at foxnewstalk.com at 6 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. From New York, defending freedom. Until the next time, stay free, America.